WWDC 2021, the keynote has come and gone. I'm Beth Motter here with ZDNet's Larry Dignan and Jason Cipriani. Guys, we learned a lot about iPadOS, iOS 15, new security enhancements, much more from the 2-hour event. Larry, go ahead and start us off. What was the most notable thing to you?
A lot of the stuff I felt like I've seen before from competitors. I do think the healthcare stuff was interesting, and that's probably Apple's most innovative front at the moment, that and chips. But the thing that stuck out for me was, there weren't competitor mentions, but I could map almost every move they did, combine privacy and sort of compile it with a competitor. So for instance, the app tracking and not tracking pixels on Apple Mail and the app permissions, this seems obviously aimed at Facebook and Google in a lot of ways, and the ad model overall. And I kind of get that from Apple's perspective, but I also get it's probably going to hurt a lot of people as collateral damage, especially the Apple Mail thing. So anyone who sends an email and it lands in Apple Mail, then you're going to have problems with tracking, even if that tracking is only analytics to see who opened an email or to see, where it was read, what country it was in, so we, some of the stuff's just basic analytics stuff that'll be blocked. And then the iOS, the Facetime updates. I mean, I just started laughing when I heard that because it screamed Zoom envy on so many levels. And while I'm really grateful that I finally get to be added to a FaceTime call via web, since I'm an Android and Windows person, I was just kind of chuckled because it's really this big video conferencing catch-up thing, and that would have been a great feature to have last year. And we probably have Apple in a different video conferencing realm if that were the case. So yeah, there are a lot of things like that where, you look at the iPadOS, it seems to rhyme with a little more like Android in some ways. But I think the biggest takeaway is that Apple, is really leaning into privacy. And the cynic in me says that's a crutch to punch some competitors in the face too. So we'll see how it plays out. But, when it comes to app nutrition labels and privacy nutrition labels, and things like that, I would feel much more comfortable if that were some nonprofit and some industry standard across the tech industry, as opposed to Apple basically saying, hey, this is what we think about privacy and we're going to be the gold standard. I think it's great for marketing, but I'd rather have that in some third party.
Yeah, I agree with you. It seems like I do see your point about it being a crutch, because Apple has been beating this privacy drum for years now. I mean, CES a few years ago, they rented out the entire side of a building and put an ad on it, and that was their only presence at the show, was this giant ad on the building that everyone walking into CES had to see, and it was the privacy ad. But there's a lot of meaningful things there as well. I agree with you that it would be better if this was a third party, person who was doing the auditing of this, because there seems to be some favoring of their own apps, or even inconsistent applying these privacy and nutrition labels to apps in the App Store. But overall, I think it's a move in the right direction. We've seen Google adopt giving marketing identifiers all zeros if an Android user later this year with Android 12 opts out of personalized ads. So I think it's moving stuff in the right direction. But overall, there's a lot more work that needs to be done there. And let's not forget, Apple allowed all this stuff on its platform for years. All the stuff they're talking about that companies track you with, it's been possible, and it's partly possible because the iPhone it became so popular. But outside of the privacy stuff, I think there's a lot of meaningful stuff that was added to iOS, iPadOS, and even macOS. The new SharePlay, I think is what it's called, feature where you can share your screen. This is going to come in so big for helping family members troubleshoot devices, because now during a FaceTime call, you can share your screen and walk someone through how to fix a device, or you can listen to music. I'm not really going to do that, but I bet my teenage daughter does it all the time once it launches, or even watch a show, whether it's, Apple TV Plus. They use Ted Lasso in the keynote to show it off. And I think those features are going to be good long-term and just add more value to iMessage, more of that lock into Apple's walled garden itself. The multitasking features on iPadOS, they look good, at least in the demos. We'll have to see how they actually are once the public beta launches and we start using it. But they at least look discoverable, which was the biggest problem they had to solve with multitasking on the iPad. So I'm excited to give those a try. And then there's that new live text feature that turns any text in a picture, whether it's one you have just taken or whether it's one that's been in your photo library for the last 10 years, and you can actually select and copy. It's a lot like Google Lens, but it's all done on device and on your iPad, Mac, or iPhone now. So in a lot of ways, Apple is catching up with Google in terms of Android features that Android users have had for years. I mean, how long ago did Google Lens launch? 5 or 6 years ago, and it could do this stuff back then. So we'll see what ends up making the final cut, right? Apple usually cuts a couple features or postpones them for the fall launch. So we'll see where it ends up.
I think the other thing that stuck out for me was the iCloud Plus.
Yes.
Where Apple's kind of cooking up VPNs.
Yeah.
I thought two things. One, I thought, well, what's going to happen to the VPN market? And then the other thing I thought is that feature going to be available in China?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm thinking no.
Yeah, probably not.
And then my third thought on iCloud Plus is, can we just do a moratorium and just get rid of the Plus after everything? Like, we have to end the Plus. Like, I don't know what you'd call it, but
yeah,
anything other than Plus. Like,
how about just iCloud? It's the same exact plan. They said it's the same cost, same fees. Why don't we just stick with the same name then? Why do we have to give it a new name?
Yeah. But yeah, once I saw the Plus, I just cringed because everything's a Plus now.
The pluses, the pros, the Macs, it all gets a little bit tiresome to try and keep up with. Yeah, so a lot of the iOS changes I felt like I'd already seen before. You know, on my iPhone, I already have Slack installed. On my iPhone, I already have Zoom installed. I have lots of things already installed. I don't know how useful I will find some of the changes, but I do think there are some very noticeable ones. Jason, we'll start with you. What feature are you most looking forward to using?
Honestly, it's the new focus feature, I would have to say, for now, until I actually get to use this. And so what Apple's basically allowing you to do is create different profiles, is what I'm going to call them, as part of this focus feature that replaces Do Not Disturb. It's still there. Do Not Disturb is still there, but now it has different settings to it. So you could create a work profile, a home profile, a writing profile, whatever you want to call them. You could create as many custom ones as you want. And what happens is you're allowed to go in and select the apps and contacts that you want to get through that Do Not Disturb block. So if you know your husband or your spouse, you want them to be able to get a hold of you, call you, or message you, you can give that contact permission to break through the Do Not Disturb block, and everything else is kept quiet. And you were just mentioning Slack. One of the features is it can alert your contacts that you have focus turned on and that you'll get back to them later, that they won't see your message until it's turned off, because it does queue the messages and then they all come through, or show up, not come through, on the phone when it's turned off. But there is a button that says notify anyway, which anyone who uses Slack knows when someone has Do Not Disturb set on or they're outside their work hours, you can force a notification through on Slack. Well, you can in iMessage now as well, which I'm not going to be too happy the first time someone does that to me and doesn't respect my Do Not Disturb settings, unless it truly, truly is an emergency. But I think there's a lot of interesting use cases for this, because you not only get the notification aspect of it, but you can control which apps are on your home screen based on the focus profile you're using. So you could have a work profile with all of your work apps. You show up to the gym, and these are based on location and or time. So if you pull up to the gym, you could have your workout focus profile activated, and it pulls up your music, pulls up your workout apps, and then when you leave there, it turns that off automatically for you. So I'm excited to dig into that and see what it has to offer truly.
The thing I'm watching most closely, which I forget what the feature was exactly called, but it was the one to sort of gauge how you're walking and your fall risk.
Yeah.
So you look at that, which is really interesting for an older population. And then you look at the part where you can share your health data with a care provider. And I really think that without the health and fitness, I don't know how the Apple Watch would do. That's the primary use case for it now. And I think they added a lot of analytics, but I think what Apple's doing over time, and the thing that's really smart and really innovative, they are embedding themselves into the healthcare market. And when you look at those features about, fall risk, and you look at those features where you can kind of gauge the vitals and respiratory function of, a person sharing it with a relative. All the baby boomers are getting older, and you think about their kids, and you think about aging in place and things like that. And, it's going to make the Apple Watch a must have. And those things are solving real problems. And I think that's that's going to embed Apple into the healthcare market really nicely, which is also, it solves a real problem, and but it's also going to drive future sales too, because what you're going to have families connected by their Apple Watch, and health will be the connective tissue probably more than FaceTime or iPad, or any of their products. It's going to be that health data and that connection there. If you look at it one way, you can look at some of those stats, and it's almost like an Internet of Things play in a lot of ways, right? Because you're gauging the metrics of somebody you're taking care of, or a parent, or whatever, and that's pretty powerful stuff. And I think to me, that was the most interesting and most innovative thing I saw. It's also just very strategic. So, I think the Apple Watch is going to win the health. It's going to be embedded in the healthcare. And I think it's just, this is just one stage in time, but you kind of see where they're going.
Yeah, Larry, that's a really good point. The health metrics and the Apple Watch alone are huge reasons for somebody to want to invest in that. You have an elderly family member, and you want to give them that Apple Watch to know, that fall detection, to know what their health metrics are. I think Apple's really onto something, and I think this is going to prove to be really big for them. And for me personally, the biggest difference between iOS and Android right now is that it's the watches. Everything else, things are seeming to get a little more blurred the longer we go.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. And if you look at just the redesign of mobile Safari in iOS 15, how it adopts, and this goes for Safari on Mac too, but it's really apparent on the iPhone looking at the screenshots, it adopts the overall color of the web page you're on. And the corners in the address bar are now rounded, kind of like they are in Chrome on Android. And the overall look from the keynote of iOS is becoming more and more like Android. But on the flip side, we have Android 12 coming out later this year that has implemented some of the same exact privacy features that we saw last year in iOS 14, like alerting you if an app is accessing your microphone or your camera. That was something Apple did first. Well, Android 12 is getting that this year, and they're taking them a little bit further than that with Android 12. But we continue to see both companies march on in getting both operating systems closer and closer, and building them closer and closer to being the same thing. And it's kind of, when the question's asked to Android or iOS, and I get asked this less and less now, but I don't know. They both kind of look the same and work the same anymore. It's really up to you. What kind of phone do you want? Which one do you like better? Or do you want to be trapped in Apple's walled garden? That's your call. But yeah, it's really interesting to see them get closer together and kind of copy features from each other every year.
Yeah, they're definitely a duopoly, and the lines are blurring a lot between the two.
Yeah.
What hasn't happened that I really wonder about is, will you just pick the smartest assistant, which clearly is Google Assistant over Siri? So I always wonder about that too, right? Like I kind of look at Android and I look at iOS, and I always think, which is smarter? But to be smart, it also means, you need to share more data or whatever, a lot of ways too. So, it's sort of that, it still comes back to that privacy thing at the end of the day. That's right. Probably the most unique spin, right? And see how it goes.
Yeah, Larry, everything always seems to fall back to privacy anymore, and for really good reason. All right. Thanks, Larry. Thanks, Jason. I appreciate it so much. As for everything WWDC, be sure to stick with CDNet. Drop us a comment. Let us know what you found most interesting, what you found to be least interesting about WWDC's keynote, or what you were looking forward to the most. As always, be sure to like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and stick with CDNet for all things tech. Thanks for watching.